Hello, hello, hello. This is episode 77 of Mark Talks About His Stuff, and it's Wednesday, the 7th of April, 2021. And today I'm going to be talking about 3 albums and about 13 singles, and a whole bunch of music trivia about a band I love, but none of it is going to be by the band itself. We're talking New Order solo albums. There are 3 of them between the period 1989 to 1992, although one of them was released in 1993. And today I'm going to give you a guide to what happened when New Order went solo in the 80s. First and foremost, this is probably going to be quite niche, but if you're interested, or more correctly, if you're thinking, well, I'd quite like to hear something that sounds like New Order, and bearing in mind that there doesn't seem to be much in the way of new material by anybody coming out at the moment, at least nobody of that particular vintage, you might want to go, well, let me go back and buy the albums that I was missing at the time that for some reason I just forgot about. Completely normal, completely natural. By the way, I found out yesterday that there was a Pet Shop Boys remix, which I didn't know existed for 26 years. I was quite surprised by that. And that is something which I'm going to be talking about when I talk about that relevant period of the Pet Shop Boys' existence. But first, we're going to talk about solo New Order. Now, the only thing that comes near to New Order, which I'm going to be talking about, is this 3 CD compilation, which should be about 12 to 13 pounds. It's called New Order Presents B Music, and it is a 3 CD compendium of all the band's solo work for other people, production, remixes, solo tracks released under weird and obscure names. Do get the CD version of it, because as you can see, it's got 3 CDs, it's about 3.5 hours long, it has a couple of New Order tracks on it, so I strongly recommend, if you want to hear what solo New Order sound like, or at least New Order when they're goofing off, moonlighting from their day job, buy this. It's got a lot of classic Factory Records tracks on it. It's got acts like Quando Quango, Section 25, Beat Club, who released a single with Bernard Sumner on vocals, Certain Ratio on here, Factory Floor, the other 2. Tim Burgess has an O2 remix, and well, just generally, it's pretty good. And there's a 25-minute New Order track, the version of Video 586, which was the very primitive and basic demo for 586, is on here. So if you think, I want to hear something new by New Order, this is a good place to start. But this really scoops up all those weird and obscure old 12-inch singles that you may not have bought in the 80s, because you only had so much money and so much space in the brain. So where we start with the story, it is, as forever, I'm going to mention, I have been reading copious amounts from this book and this book and this book, all by members of New Order, ex or stroke current members. Come the end of the Reading Festival in August 1989, New Order effectively had split, although they didn't tell anybody that that's what they'd done. Instead, the first rumours that we had around anything around that were when the band started to release solo material. And the first piece of solo material that was released came out in November 1989. And here it is. It is a 12-inch single and a CD single by a band called Revenge. Revenge are Peter Hook's first solo band, which effectively was built out of, I think, a rampant desire to continue making music. And I think what I'll say about Revenge, and also, by the way, Stephen Morris is very upfront about this with his solo work, is it wasn't necessarily built out of a burning desire to create art. It was more because being a musician is what they did, and when the band stopped working, they just carried on writing music. It was also a pretty clear kind of statement of intent. So when Bernard Sumner said in 1989 to the rest of the band that he wanted to take some time off and work with somebody else, he'd already had a conversation with Johnny Marr and said, I'd like to form a band with you. And Johnny, who was not a Smith at that point and was in the said, I'd like to do that. Apparently, the same evening, Peter Hook asked Johnny Marr in a nightclub toilet, if Johnny wanted to form a band with him, and he said, "Hooky, I'd love to, but I've just joined Bernard Sumner's new band." So there we have it. So Revenge is probably a very aptly named band, actually. Now, there was a race to get out a single first. Now, whether that race was perceived by anybody apart from Peter Hook, I don't know. But this came out in November 1989. I remember watching it on snub television. And possibly even Rapido as well, in late 1989, with this new band that I've not heard of. It was formed by a member of New Order, and the A-side, or the lead track on the single, is called Seven Reasons. And Seven Reasons sounds just like New Order's Run, but sung by Peter Hook. So it's good. It's not amazing. It's quite good. What you can see, though, and Peter Hook's quite upfront about it, and I think Stephen Morris is as well, is that the solo bands are less than the sum of the parts. They're clearly not quite as amazing as New Order. It's a sad admission to make, but I really, really enjoy the solo albums, actually. Now, I'm reminded when New Order split up of a statement that somebody made about Take That, when Take That split up, and they said, I remember, when Take That split up, I had a phone call of my friend who said, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Well, why?" And he went, "Well, Take That splitting up." And, I quite like Take That. And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's just a band. Why would I be not all right about Take That splitting up?" I think he was being silly. But one of the things that somebody said in between floods of tears on the BBC Evening News in 1996, when Take That announced their split, was not that, well, I've just lost the best band I've ever loved, but I've got 5 new bands I know I'm going to like. With New Order, it maybe wasn't quite so clear. I had 3 new bands which I was going to enjoy instead. So this is the first single by Revenge. It's an EP, actually. It's got, I think, 3 songs on it. It's got seven Reasons, which, as I've said, sounds just like New Order's Run. It's got a track called Jesus, I Love You, which is a rampaging monster of bleeps and bloops and bass and growly vocals. And the CD has a track on it which is not available on the 12-inch. A CD has a track called Bleach Boy, which is effectively a remix of a song which is called Bleach Man, which later appeared on the Revenge album. This is pretty good. It's not amazing, it's pretty good. I wouldn't recommend that this would be your first place to start when it comes to listening to solo New Order. But I will get that recommendation later. In fact, I'll do that recommendation now. If you want to hear the first and best kind of solo New Order album, certainly the major player to go for is this, Electronic. But we're going to come back to that later. And released not long after that came the first single by a band called Electronic. Electronic are Bernard Sumner and Johnny Marr. And that sounds like a match made in Manchester or possibly Heaven, the nightclub. What a fantastic song this is. This is Getting Away With It, which was their first single. It's this huge, lovely, funky, disco, epic duet between Bernard Sumner and Neil Tennant of Pet Shop Boys, who I'm also doing a series about at the moment. This kind of section intersects with that. So this is December 1989. And this was a huge hit. It was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. And it was just a lovely beast of funky piano deliciousness with extra funk guitar. One of the best singles of the 80s, but also very clearly heralding the introduction of the 90s. And actually, it's also the record that, out of all the record sleeves that I've ever got, this is probably the one I'd be most likely to drink if I saw it. I certainly wouldn't be wanting to drink the Mannix Holy Bible, or for that matter, anything by Iron Maiden. This would be, the record sleeve. And it's just a fantastic little song. It's funky, it's beaty, it's tasty, it goes at a great pace. And it comes in a number of formats. Naturally, I was a record collector scum, still am. And so I bought the 7-inch with the edit and a B-side called Lucky Bag. I bought the CD single, which has doesn't have Lucky Bag on it, but it does have the full-length instrumental and extended versions of Getting Away With It. And I bought the remix 12-inch called Electro Mix. This one probably tastes a bit better than the other one, actually, which has 3 remixes on and an alternate version of Lucky Bag as well. Lucky Bag, by the way, Electronic were very good at doing instrumental B-sides that meandered around all over the place. They could quite literally do them in their sleep, and they definitely do it here. And here is the American CD single of the remixes of Getting Away With It, which also features 2 versions of Lucky Bag. So this was the only place I could get Lucky Bag on CD, and I was the kind of person that wanted all the stuff on CD. So Getting Away With It, fantastic solo song. One of the best singles of the 80s stroke 90s. Now the next thing which happens, by the way, perhaps not quite so well known, is that Bernard sang on a track by 808 State on the XL album. It's called Spanish Heart. It's pretty good. I haven't heard it for about 20 years. But then he also contributed vocals to this, which is a track by a band called Beat Club. And this is the first record on a label called Rob's Records, which was Rob Gretton of New Order's management structure, forming his own label. Bernard Sumner remixed it. He added vocals onto the 7-inch, and it's just a belter. It's just a wonderful, very, very unknown track. And on the 12-inch, we have the Bernard Sumner remix, but the extended Bernard Sumner remix doesn't have his vocals on. So if you want to get the version that's got his vocals on, go for the 7-inch. Really great track, sounds just like electronic. I will post a link to it. I've done a remix of it where I've added Bernard's vocals back into the 12-inch, by the way, because that's the kind of sad train spotter that I am. And not content with keeping busy during the summer of 1990, Bernard also remixed this, Technotronic's Rockin Over The Beat. Yes, I own it. Yes, I bought it because it was remixed by Bernard Sumner. Please don't ask me to listen to it. I can't recall ever listening to that. And, well, if you're in, New Order, you're going to keep yourself busy in the meantime. So 1990, they did the World in Motion football song, which, as I mentioned in a previous episode, almost got me into a fight. Because I was 17 and they weren't. The next thing which came out was the second single by Revenge. This is Pineapple Face, which is named after the slang title that the American Army had for, I think, General Noriega, who was a political figure at the time. Pineapple Face is bizarre. It really is. It's a really, really strange song. It's a really strange band, actually, Revenge, because it sounds like 3 men fighting over a synthesizer. And not getting the mixing or the production quite right. It's okay, but it's kind of like you'd go and see them because they reminded you of New Order as opposed to being a great band in their own right. And Pineapple Face is unamazing. It's probably the best way to describe it. Here is the Australian CD single, which features a number of different remixes. Featured Pineapple Face's Big Day and Pineapple Face's Last Lunge, which was mixed by Mike Pickering, apparently a Hattie and the DJ of years gone by. I don't know why I bought it. It's not particularly good. But then at the time, New Order could put out a set of disco syncopated farts, and I'd be like, that's amazing, I'm going to own it. And of course, that meant that when Revenge released their first album, in fact their only album, which is called One True Passion, I bought it, like the fool that I am. Now this copy, I remember, and I'd like to thank my brother for this, by the way. I think I used to ask him to go and pick up records with my pocket money on Monday on the way back home, because he used to go through the record shops in town. So he'd get off the train, coming back from school, go and buy records, and then come home. So my favourite time of the week was probably about 6:15 p.m. on a Monday, when my brother brought back the records from the town centre, because I knew damn well the Woolworths wasn't going to be stocking Revenge's One True Passion. In fact, might have been hardly any shops that stocked this one. This is okay. This is clearly a New Order solo album. It sounds like New Order B-sides. And that, by the way, is not a bad thing. New Order have done some amazing B-sides. They've done some unamazing B-sides. This sounds like New Order B-sides where the other guy sings. Or maybe an album made out of all the Depeche Mode Martin Gore tracks. It's okay, not amazing. As I said, it sounds like 3 men arguing over a mixing desk, because that's pretty much exactly what it was. And I can't say I like the cover, actually, either. I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to tap into the sense that you had from someone like Roxy Music's debut album, where they had pictures of glamorous people wearing not very many clothes, and Revenge was launched with full confidence. The album cost £150,000 to record. The promotion of it cost an equally huge amount of money. The record sold, putting bluntly, fuck all. Sorry to swear. It really didn't sell very much at all. And the band, I think, only played 36 shows during the course of their career and never played to a headline crowd of bigger than about 1,000 people. So they were never like a huge crowd or a huge band at all. And as is the case with Creation Records, for example, if you pay attention to Creation Records, What's the Story? Morning Glory sold something like 70 billion copies. The album that came out after that, which was the Ruby Remix album, came in this huge deluxe ornate book that clearly cost more than it meant to manufacture, and was going to sell probably about 17 copies. Of course, I bought one because that's the kind of guy that I am. Anyway, the Revenge album is okay. It's probably on YouTube or Spotify. It's quite good. It's not amazing, but if you think, well, I need more stuff that sounds like New Order in my life and I haven't heard it, if you're missing something, go for this, because it's got tons of hooky bass and it really sounds like New Order B-sides, and that is not a bad thing. So we've got One True Passion, Hello, with a picture that made my mother ask, what is this band and why are you buying it? Because I think that's the point when you've got bands, isn't it? Is that you sit there and you go, well, Mum, yeah, I know, but I like them, and there you go. And then she comes in when she's listening, but I'm listening to one of the other tracks, and she's like, it's not very good, is it? And I'm like, yeah, Mum, I know. So the third thing which came out, by the way, was the third Revenge single, which is Slave, backed with a track called Amsterdam. And I think Amsterdam is a cover of John Cale, ex of the Velvet Underground. And again, Slave is not an amazing song. In terms of New Order solo albums in my order of preference, Revenge's One True Passion is one up from bottom. And the New Order and solo album, the one that is the worst one, also has Peter Hook's hands all over it, by the way. But Revenge, Slave, was heavily remixed, but they didn't make it any good. So I guess that leaves us with us ushering ourselves into 1991. Electronic, Bernard and Johnny's band have spent all the time in the studio writing and recording new stuff, and they played 2 shows in Los Angeles supporting Depeche Mode, playing mostly unreleased songs. Everyone was like, well, when they come to put out a song, I'm sure it's going to be very, very good, apart from getting away with it. And then early 1991 came the release of Get the Message, the electronic single. This is a classic of its time. It's just a lovely, breezy, sunshiny song to me. It's got fantastic wah-wah guitar by Johnny Marr. Denise Johnson, sadly missed, sings her heart out all over it. And the video was shot during a volcanic eruption, of all things. Just such a great song. And I love Get the Message, but I do think it's very overrated. Now, the reason I say it's very overrated is because there are better electronic songs, and we'll get to those in a minute. There was a remix version of Get the Message, which was released on this American CD single, which has the DNA groove mixes of Get the Message on. I don't have Get the Message on 12-inch. I probably should have done, but at the time I was limited by my budget and availability. So I bought the 7-inch single here from the UK of Get the Message. And there was also a promo 7-inch of the DNA remixes, which were available in exclusive radio edits here on this 7-inch single. So this is a promo radio 7-inch of Get the Message. Worth having a listen to. And then that was followed up with this wonderful beastie, Electronic by Electronic. Yeah, I know, something ate the section at the top there and I took that off. This is an original Factory Records pressing from 1991. It does not have Getting Away with it on it. It's got 10 tracks, and this copy jumps and skips all over the place because I loved it to bits when I bought it, and I love it to bits now. It's a fantastic album. It always takes me back to the summer of 1991. And more specifically, actually, it takes me back to Saturday, the 22nd of June, 1991, because I remember the only time I've ever heard a DJ play this, apart from when my friend Keith played it, well, the only time I've ever heard a DJ play this was in the run-up to the Wonder Stuff taking the stage at the Walsall Bescott Stadium in the middle of a torrential rainstorm on the 22nd of June, 1991. So I always would think of the Wonder Stuff and that show in Walsall with a girl that I really liked, but I never got it together with, when I hear this album, and when I specifically hear the song Reality. It's just a great, perfect album. It's a pop album. It's unashamedly pop about it. It is 1991 in a nutshell. And I don't mean the bad bits of 1991. I don't mean, Warrant and, or Alternate or anything like that. Or, whatever the name is, Blue Pearl, that stupid dance band, or Vanilla Ice, or Wet Wet Wet, or Bryan Adams doing Everything I Do It For You. I don't mean that part of 1991. This reminds me of all the best bits of 1991. When I was still a teenager, and when the future was a promise and not a threat, and when I still had, I was just full of dreams, and I was full of hope, I was full of aspiration, and the places which this music took me were places that I wanted to live in forever. I wanted to curl inside the grooves of this album, because this album sounded to me like the sun beating down on you on a sunny day, whilst you had a cold beer and a hot woman or man next to you. Even though the lyrics don't reflect that, that's what it sounded like to me. And I've only seen, by the way, one of the songs from this album performed live. The only time I've seen, the only time I've seen Bernard perform any of his solo material was in 2009 and 2010, when he toured as a solo artist under the name Band Lieutenant. The band performed the track Tighten Up, which sounded great, and I was just thinking, what a waste of electronic to not tour so much. I understand that there were reasons behind that, relating to health, and relating to perhaps wanting to be around your kids and to have them and be around them whilst they grow up, as opposed to watching your kids grow up through photographs, and when you come back off tour they're suddenly twice the height and they're speaking English, which is one of the things that happens. But I just thought, what a waste of the potential that there was to only play maybe 7 or 8 live shows as electronic. And the band didn't tour, so I didn't see them. I didn't see Johnny Marr live until the year 2000, when he played in the crypt of Coventry's TikTok Club, playing, I think, his second ever solo show with the band The Healers. And I didn't see any of the songs from Electronic played live until 2009. So to me, seeing a member of New Order live was still a thing that hadn't happened to me. Revenge played, 39 shows, and I think the only time they played anywhere near me that I could get to was a fetish club in Wolverhampton, where the dress code was rubber and I only had pencils. And so therefore I didn't see any member of New Order live until 1997. I didn't see New Order live until 1998. I didn't see Bernard Sumner perform in a solo capacity outside of New Order until 2009. Stephen and Gillian have never performed live as solo artists. So Electronic, fantastic album. If you haven't heard it and you think, I really want something that sounds like New Order but with loads of Johnny Marr's fantastically funky guitar on it, this is the beastie for you. Amazing album. I love it to bits. Got some incredible songs on it, like Some Distant Memory, which is one that you probably won't know unless you know the album. Has the only time where I think we can justify having an oboe solo, because I don't think there's ever a place in popular music for oboes, apart from at the end of this song. And it's just a wonderful album, but lyrically it's just chock full of having a broken heart. And yes, as they say, all art is autobiography. They never tell you quite whose autobiography it is. I had a broken heart when this album came out in 1991. I will go into the reasons for that at some point, I'm absolutely sure. But the lyrics really, really stuck with me. This is a fantastic album. This is, I'm afraid to say, better than some New Order records. But to be fair, when New Order set the bar as high as they do, that is strong praise from me. One of the albums of 1991. And it always takes me back there, but not in a bad way. And I recently read about the Reminiscence bump actually, which is a scientific theory where people's memories, the ability to form new memories, isn't quite so clearly defined after the age of 25. And that could explain perhaps why we're all a little bit nostalgic for music that we absolutely love from decades ago when we were younger, when people were shorter and lived nearer the water, to quote a band. So the fourth the fourth release from Electronic, by the way, is this. The last single from the album is called Feel Every Beat. This is the American 12-inch, and the reason I've chosen the American 12-inch is because it's got more mixes on it, actually. So there's the CD single here in the UK, which has the DNA mix of Feel Every Beat, a B-side called Lean to the Inside, and a track called Second to None. You can't get Second to None anywhere else apart from on this CD single and maybe a reissue. Second to None is as good as anything on the album. If you haven't heard an electronic song called Second to None, Google it after I finish speaking, listen to it and go, my God, I had no idea that song existed. Absolutely fantastic track. This is perhaps one of the best CD singles ever because it's got Second to None on it. I'm not the kind of person that ranks my CD singles in order of preference. I just think it's an incredible B-side, and it should have been on something other than the CD single, because at that point it was only on CD, which is much like things later on in history where things were only on CD. We also had, by the way, as I said, the fourth release by Electronic, which is which is Feel Every Beat. Feel Every Beat has some ill-advised attempt at rapping from Bernard, and I don't think I'm a fan of that part of it. But it's a great pacey little track, pretty good second, third single off an album. This is the American 12-inch, which has a number of extra mixes which you couldn't get anywhere else. I think it's got a tactile mix, a downstairs dub mix, and a downstairs mix. And I think the 12-inch of this from Factory Records may have had a completely different set of remixes on. But if I had the option between this with all the mixes on and some which were only on CD, and I had a choice between the UK 12-inch, all things being equal, I'm going to go for the one with more tracks on. So I bought this. Oh look, Bored Millionaires. Can't go far wrong without pictures of bored millionaires sitting around on the cover. And there's also a US CD single here. I've probably not opened this in 10 years. I will say, fantastic graphic design there. Again, it's got all the tracks off the 12-inch plus Second to None. So clearly a decision had been made at some point that Second to None was going to remain only on CD singles. And that brings us to late 1991. And late 1991, again, a good period in my life. Probably because late 1991 I met a fantastic person who turned my life upside down and showed me that relationships weren't all dumpster fires. So thank you for that. Thanks for putting up with me telling you about this band, the other two. The other two are Stephen and Gillian from New Order. The other two are members of the band who formed their own band, not because they wanted to, but I think because they had to. And I'm going to go and quote Stephen's book here, where he talks about that. And he said, I'm not apologising for the record. I think like the majority of band solo or side projects, there was nothing substantial behind it. It was unintentionally self-indulgent. It had no reason to exist other than to prove to ourselves that we could do it. We had treated the whole thing as a bit of a joke, and neither of us harboured a craving for the limelight. And it wasn't as if we had bottled up musical frustrations that couldn't be vented elsewhere. Which is a pretty fair way of describing the other two, which was a band formed out of necessity, boredom and ego, as opposed to anything else. And by the way, that doesn't show when you listen to it. I really, really like the other two. I think they're a fantastically underrated act. And underrated probably because they never played live and they only made 2 albums. But the reason why they're underrated as well is because even the name was self-effacing. We're the other two, we're the geezers that stand at the back. It's like if when you buy the Kiss solo albums, not by the way that I would ever touch that garbage, who's going to go and buy the one from the drummer? Well, probably everybody, come to think of it. Probably because he's a better singer than Paul Stanley. But most people aren't going to buy the drummer's solo album. And the other two was the drummer and the keyboardist's solo band. And if you're the drummer in the band, the solo act or career that you have generally is less popular and sells less copies than anybody else, which is why Nick Mason from Pink Floyd plays to about 4,000 people and David Gilmour plays to about 50,000 if he wants to, and Roger Waters always insists on playing the biggest football stadium on the planet. So there you have it. The other two are a lovely, breezy, bright, light pop act with female vocals from Gillian. I love them. I think they're great. They remind me of some kind of super kind of vodka strength version of Saint Etienne. Actually, really direct, clear, lovely, breezy pop music. Now, Tasty Fish was named after a chip shop in Salford, I think. And if I remember correctly, there is a photograph of it in this book by Stephen Morris, and I should have memorised the page number whilst I kind of go through it. But there you go, Tasty Fish. That is the shop, which might as well have been called Codfather actually, but that's the shop that gave the song Tasty Fish its title. Now, Tasty Fish just missed the top 40. The reason being is that the record plugger had apparently just split up with his wife and was having a really tough time, and so didn't really put the hours in. He didn't go to the shops, he didn't make sure that they had copies that they could sell, and therefore if people wanted to buy them, firstly they didn't know they'd come out, secondly they couldn't find them if they wanted them, and thirdly they weren't going to get restocked. And that's pretty much the reason. I mean, I found out Tasty Fish existed because a video that I'd never heard or seen before appeared on MTV's Most Wanted and MTV's 120 Minutes. And I was like, oh, that looks like Stephen and Gillian from New Order. What are they doing with that? And so I bought it. And Tasty Fish, I love to the end of the earth. The other reason why it's called Tasty Fish, and they will not confess to this, could be from the episode of The Simpsons which has Fugu in it, where the chef is going poison, 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 tasty fish. Or it could be that the song inspired the lovely and rather silly scene from The Simpsons. This is the wonderful 7-inch single of Tasty Fish, and also the CD single. This is a copy by Out Promotion. It has 4 mixes on it, so it has an extra version, the Almond Slice mix. I have no memory as to whether the Almond Slice mix is any good or not. Let's pretend it's great, yeah? Yeah, it's brilliant. No, it's a great song. I love it to bits. I wish more people knew it. It's just a lovely hidden classic of the period. So we're into 1992 now. And Revenge are still going, they're still touring, and this is the 12-inch EP of Gun World Porn, which doesn't have an A-side, doesn't have a hit single on. It's 4 more songs from Revenge. They're dirty, dark, grim, kind of like modern Massive Attack, but with Peter Hook singing over the top of them, kind of stuff. Completely out of time, completely out of phase with the world around it. Commercially, fell flat on its arse. One of the last things that was released under Factory Records, by the way, Gun World Porn. And there are a number of versions of Gun World Porn. There's a CD single, and then there's an American CD single, and the American CD single has some remixes by Gary Clayle and David Bianco on. They're not amazing. As I've said before, Revenge sound like a band where every final version of the track is actually a rough mix, and rough is probably the word. So that brings kind of like Revenge to a close, but it doesn't. And so whilst I'm talking about it, in 2003, Revenge released this, which is a One True Passion V2.0, which is a 32-track expanded edition of One True Passion. It's got a different track listing. It's got a number of songs kind of jiggled in all around. It's more like a compilation of Revenge's entire studio work in a rough order as opposed to a reissue of the album. Well worth getting though, because it's got 32 tracks on it, and it's got some great tracks on It's got some not great songs on it. It does, by the way, have probably one of the best remix of Revenge, which is a track called "The Trouble with Girls," by remixed by David Bianco, which previously was only on a Factory Records promotional cassette that was on the front of Select magazine. This is, if you're going to buy one of Revenge CD, this is the one to get. And if you're going to buy one Revenge CD, the one not to get is probably this, which is No Pain, No Gain, live in 1991. This is a compilation from two shows, one in Manchester, headlining, not headlining, but playing in the middle of the afternoon at Manchester's Heaton Park, Cities in the Park event, with some bonus tracks recorded in Japan, including a cover version of the Velvet Underground's White Light, White Heat, and I think a track by the Rolling Stones called Citadel. It's okay, not amazing, but as we are going to find out, Peter Hook really likes releasing live albums, and that is another one of them. Now, in order to promote that, if you ordered it from the label, you also got a limited run CD of two previously unreleased tracks, Tel Aviv and The Wilding, which I think were re-recordings of unfinished Revenge songs with Peter Hook and Phil Cunningham being formerly of Marion and Electronic, and at the time in 2003 being a member of New Order. And then 1992 brought us into the final electronic single, which I'm going to be talking about in this particular period. It is from the soundtrack of the unforgettable film Real Cool World, Disappointed, with vocals by Neil Tennant. The UK CD single has three mixes of Disappointed and a remix of Idiot Country by the Stereo MCs operating under the name Ultimatum. The American CD single has a remix of the track Gangster, which has been done by Razormaid. The remix of Gangster, not amazing. Of course, I had to go and buy the import version of it to find out. There's also a 7-inch, and Disappointed is full Neil Tennant vocals all the way through. It sounds like, the greatest Pet Shop Boys single you've never heard. It's a great, lovely, fun, sunshine song with an air of heartbreak that sits alongside it. Absolutely love this song to bits, and I will not apologise to anyone about that. And then in, I think, 2013, Electronic released a deluxe edition of the debut album as a 2 CD version that contained a whole bunch of B-sides and unreleased tracks on it. So those unreleased tracks included a remix of Twisted Tenderness from 1999, an alternate mix of Until the End of Time, an instrumental of that, and a remix of Twisted Tenderness, an instrumental version of that as well. If you're going to buy one version of Electronic, and the difference in price isn't too big, this is the one to go for, by the way. So that brings us to the end of the first phase of Electronic's existence. But what I haven't touched upon yet is a band that I love, which I've mentioned before, The Other Two, who released this absolutely brilliant album. I absolutely love it to bits. The Other Two and You. It really felt that the vinyl and CD versions of this album are contractual obligations. This album was released in late 1993, probably because London Records realised they'd bought New Order. They bought The Other Two, and they might as well do something with the record that they bought, even though they were focus grouped. And the bands were saying, well, actually, Gillian was saying, if you think I'm going to appear on Top of the Pops in dungarees with a chicken under my arm, you've got to be joking. I agree with her position around that. It's absolutely the right one to take. This is a lovely album. I really, really recommend it. If you haven't heard it, please do track it down and give it a listen. It's just great, and there is so much of it that, again, sounds like instrumental New Order tracks, and the ones which Gillian sings on, Tasty Fish, The Greatest Love, Selfish, Innocence. They're lovely songs, just lovely, lovely songs. I love this album. It always reminds me of sitting outside with a cold drink. It's that good. And this is the original version of it, the limited edition that came out, which has, despite what you may not be able to see there, a mirrored kind of cover. Again, throwing money at something which probably wasn't going to make any money back. This record was finished and completed in late 1991 and was ready to be put out, and Factory chose not to put it out because they wanted a New Order album instead. They should have stuck this out because, as far as I'm concerned, this is a 1991 album, and the band, the other two, went back into the studio, did some frankly pointless tinkering, remixing, and overdubbing, primarily to make sure that it had some new material that was on it, and wasn't just a 1991 album with the words London on the side instead of Factory. Just a great record. Give it a listen if you think I want something that sounds like Poppy New Order with a woman singing. This is it. Absolutely great record. And it was trailed off by a single called Selfish, which has one of the best lyrics ever. Someone I hate, she thinks she's great, and love is to state the obvious, is the opening line. And it's all around the fact that I think your boyfriend might fancy someone that I really don't like, and I'm kind of a bit jealous. It's a great song, actually. And the vinyl version of this, the 12-inch version of this, has a waterfront mix, which is remixed by Moby and only available on the 12-inch of an album track called Moving On, which at one point was debated to be a single. And here's a CD single of Selfish, which has even more remixes on it. It has all the mixes on the 12-inch apart from Moving On, and a couple of extra ones just for extra measure. And the last thing that came out from the other two in their original first incarnation was this 12-inch single that was only released in America. It is called Innocence, and it's got two remixes of Innocence. It's got two new mixes of the 1993 version of Tasty Fish on the B-side, alongside a non-album track called Satisfied. Satisfied is the great lost classic of this period. I guarantee you that unless you've been following me on Twitter and clicked on my YouTube link, that you haven't heard it. It is brilliant, and it shouldn't be hidden away on a 12-inch single. But as I understand it, one of them doesn't like the song, and so therefore it won't be on any reissues. But please give it a listen. It's a great song. And then in 1993, what we had actually, this is the expanded remix version of The Other Two and You, which has a different cover, that was released by LTM Records in I think about 2010. And this has a number of rare mixes on it. So it's got previously unreleased versions of The Greatest Thing on there, as well as the first CD appearance for the remix of Moving On, and tracks of remixes of Tasty Fish and Selfish, as well as the album. Now, you might think, well, why was Gillian the singer? Well, actually, they started recording the other two album, and Kim Wilde came in and sang for a couple of days, but in the end, she decided not to go with that, which is a shame, because I think with Kim Wilde it would have been actually a really interesting record. The reissue of The Other Two and You that came out in 2010, if you ordered it from LTM Records, came with this, which is a handmade CDR and a card sleeve with a number of bonus tracks. These bonus tracks, by the way, are available on the band's SoundCloud, an alternate mix of Moving On, one called Auto Sound, a mix of Tasty Fish, one called Sawdust, and a couple of remixes of Selfish, and one of You Can Fly. And You Can Fly is from the second Other Two album, which I'll be touching upon in a future episode when we get to 1999. And in case any of you are wondering, this t-shirt, by the way, does say New Order, Manchester, 29/12/1998. I bought it at the gig, which means I finally got to achieve my childhood dream of seeing a pop band, which sounds crazy until you realise that at the time, New Order had split up twice by the time I'd seen them, and were both very publicly telling everybody that would listen, and many people that wouldn't, that they would never ever reform. Before then they did. And reforming, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean, as the Pixies had it, does this mean we're good now. Anyway, that brings us through the three solo albums from 1989 to 1993 by the members of New Order: the Revenge album One True Passion, Electronic's debut, which is self-titled, and The Other Two and You's album The Other Two and You, which I love dearly. I love these bands. If you think I need to hear something that sounds like New Order, give them a listen. I'm sure they're all free on the internet. Enjoy them, dance around, sing badly, which is all the things I do when I listen to them. and hopefully you'll enjoy them and you'll find more music that you love, because we're not getting any younger, and we need all the good music in the world that we can. I'm going to stop now because I've been monologuing for 44 minutes and 31 seconds about parts of my record collection. As per normal, hope you're taking care of yourselves and looking after each other. I really enjoyed this. You can probably tell I really love my music. I'm very passionate about it. And the reason being is that music is the map that helps me through the terrain that is life. And if I can dance at the same time, then it's all the better for me. By the way, don't listen to the Technotronic remix. It's a bag of crap. Right, see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Be nice in the comments. Love you lots. Bye.